Okay, so like what I've been asking every week is, what did you think of the story? And you're saying maybe you didn't follow it as well. So
Yeah, and initially it's just kind of like trying to figure out, like, obviously there was the kidnapping, which is just interesting storyline. But then I found it strange because it didn't seem to shock the kid at all.
yep.
Very, very, you went along with it very easily.
Yep. Took it in stride.
Yeah.
I think the first thing that we have to recognize, and it being a story, we may not, because it's just on paper, so you have to like get it in your brain first, is it's a comedy. Like, this is supposed to be funny from the very first line to the end. They're comedic characters. So the fact that the kid is like, okay, I got kidnapped, and that the kidnappers are actually really very nice and are actually less mean than the kid is.
Right?
Yeah. So all of that is like for comedic effect. It's O. Henry is really leaning into irony, like situational irony. Normally, a situation like this, the kidnappers are mean, bad people who we're scared of. We think they're going to kill us. That's not the case. It's actually the kid who's literally tries to scalp one of the poor kidnappers.
Right.
And I definitely feel for Bill, the main one who has to take care of Johnny, because he definitely gets the worst of it, bruises up and down his legs and arms and scratches on his face and almost being scalped and being ridden like a horse.
Yeah.
Definitely wasn't a fun time for him. And in fact, it was funny because at the end of the story, he said, it's totally worth paying $250 just to give him back.
Yeah.
So, yeah, one of the reasons we picked this story is because, like, it's a comedy. It's lighthearted. It's supposed to be fun. It's very tongue-in-cheek, like kind of sarcastic. And so you're not supposed to take it too seriously.
Okay.
Because if you do, then you're like, wait a minute, the dad doesn't want the kid back, nobody's worried about the kid doesn't want to leave. Like, it doesn't make any sense if you don't think about it as just being funny.
Okay.
So, okay, let's see. I can share my note annotations. Share my screen. Maybe I could share my screen. That's a word. Maybe it's on this one. So I'm in my student account, Mr. Groot. For this story, I chose to highlight some diction, so I made that blue. I made my unfamiliar words blue text on a yellow background, and I made my character descriptions green, and then just general notes are that cream color that Google Docs does anyway.
Okay.
So I also highlighted all of the character names because they don't, like, they just kind of pop up in the story as you're going. Like, you don't even know the boy's name until, I don't know, the 8th page or something. He's just called Red Chief the whole time. And
Yeah.
then, of course, the narrator, they don't say his name until further down too. So Bill Driscoll, he's the main kidnapper who gets picked on the most. Sam is the narrator. And I don't think, I reread this, each year or whatever. I don't think Sam's last name is ever shared. So he's just Sam. And then Johnny is the little boy's name. We finally find out. Johnny Dorset. Yeah. And then Ebenezer Dorset is the father. Johnny's.
Okay.
So right off the first line, you have foreshadowing, and we know that things are not going to go the way the bad guys think it's going to go. Because his first sentence is, it looks like a good thing, but wait till I tell you. So right away, we know it's not going to be a good thing, right? So he's setting us up right off. We figure out that we're set in Summit, Alabama. That's our setting. Also, the narrator likes to use big words. You know, he uses in the first paragraph, apparition, which is actually not the word that he wants to say here. So he's trying to sound smart by using big words, but he uses the words wrong or uses the wrong word. So we know he's not as smart as he likes to think he is. Because he said, it says here, it was, as Bill afterward expressed it, during a moment of temporary mental apparition. Well, you know what an apparition is, right? It's a ghost, right?
Yeah.
It's not a mental ghost. That's not what he's trying to say. He's trying to say aberration, because aberration is like an unexpected like thing that doesn't belong. So it was a mental aberration. And he continues throughout the play. You'll not play. You see, theater. Throughout the short story, he continues to use words in the wrong way and continues to use big words. So he likes to think of himself as being smart, and but we know as the reader, maybe he's not as smart as he thinks he is.
Yeah.
And then we have lots of irony, like I was telling you, the story is loaded with situational irony, verbal irony, dramatic irony. We have all of it in here. Like, that's probably the strongest literary device that O. Henry uses. And in our second paragraph, it says that the town is as flat as a flannel cake, which is like a pancake, but it's called Summit, and Summit is a mountain. So even the place, the fact that it's super flat, but it's called Summit, is ironic. So like the whole thing just is built up to be silliness, right? So the narrator, Sam, thinks that these people are dumb because they live in the country and they're in Alabama. He calls them peasantry and self-satisfied and undeleterious. So just, they're not scary to him. They're stupid. So he expects this to be a super easy plan. Again, this contradiction of kind of like his fantasy versus reality. In his mind, they're just gonna pop on down to Alabama, take $2,000 from the Rubes, and then leave. That's not how it's gonna be. So they start out with $600. And I like this sentence here too, because he says, we have $600. We just need $2,000 more to pull off our scheme in Western Illinois. That's almost 3 times what they already have. But he's like, we only need, it's just $2,000 more. And like set in the 1800s, this is set in the mid to late 1800s, $2,000 is nothing to sneeze at. Like, that's a lot of money. I mean, even now it's still money, you know, it's still something. Then it was a lot. So I think he oversimplifies frequently, like both the plot of how hard this is going to be and like it's not that much money and all this sort of stuff. How about this word in the third paragraph, the philoprogenitiveness?
Yeah, I wasn't exactly sure what that was.
Yeah, I know. I highlighted it in blue. As you see, it has the blue text. It just means like love for your child. So the narrator says he thinks that rural communities love their children more than people who live in cities, which of course is a silly thing to say. It's very ridiculous. And it's meant to be. It's supposed to be funny. But just also more of his like silly conclusions that he draws. Oh, in the country, they love their kids more, so a kidnapping project is going to work better in the country because they love their kids more. And he's also not worried about getting caught because he says, like, all they have are constables and lackadaisical bloodhounds, and maybe they'll write an article about us in the farmer's budget. So he's like, they're dumb, they don't have good police, they love kids more, let's go kidnap in the South, basically. So do you think there's any significance to the dad's name being Ebenezer? Do you know any other famous Ebenezers? Well, maybe you've heard the story.
Yeah, the Grinch or whatever that was.
Yeah, the Scrooge. Yeah, Scrooge. Ebenezer Scrooge. The Grinch is another version of Ebenezer Scrooge, right? So that story, A Christmas Carol, Ebenezer is a stingy person who collects mortgages and like closes on people's homes. And this Ebenezer is just like that. It says he's a mortgage financier and he's stern and upright. So I marked it as a literary allusion. The fact that O. Henry chose Ebenezer as the name, it means something, right? Mm-hmm. So just a reference to another famous stingy guy. And then the little boy is described as being 10, and he has freckles. Basically, freckles means like they're really big, like they come up off his face. Like they're not the light, tiny freckles, they're like the big freckle dots. And he has red hair, bright red hair. Also, that could be some symbolism, right? Like, because how do people usually characterize people with red hair? Not saying it's true, but I'm saying, how are they usually characterized?
It's not nice people.
But like fiery, angry, like short-tempered people, right? So the little boy has bright red hair, and that could right there be like,
Right.
So they're like, okay, we're gonna take this kid and get the money, but wait till I tell you what happens. So did you notice what Johnny was doing when they were about to kidnap him?
That he fought it for a little bit?
Yeah, he fought for a while and then they like managed to get him, but no, before they grabbed him, he was throwing rocks at a kitten.
Oh, I didn't even catch that. Jeez,
it says the kid was in the street throwing rocks at a kitten. So and it's not even a cat, not like that's much better, but it was a kitten. He's throwing rocks at a kitten. Like, right there, you should probably be like, peace out. I don't think I want to take this one. Yeah. And then they did the classic kidnapper line, which I think is pretty funny, when they're like, hey, kid, you want a bag of candy and you want to go for a ride? And Johnny throws a piece of brick at Bill and like blocks him in the eye before they've even kidnapped him. So we start that relationship, that like contention early. And Bill says that's going to cost an extra $500. Maybe not. O. Henry compares Johnny to a cinnamon bear, which is like a really big, kind of a grizzly type bear that has red hair. So like another reference to his red hair. And they finally get him in the buggy and they drive him up to the mountain and they keep him. But then, so what's the irony of once they've kidnapped him? And you already kind of mentioned it too.
That he's like having fun.
Yeah. He's like, this is the best. I love camping. I never go camping. I've never been camping. What can we imply about his home life that being kidnapped is like the best day of his life?
There's not a lot going on in his home life.
Yeah. He doesn't have the best home life, maybe not doesn't have a lot of fun with his dad probably.
Yeah.
And there's never any mention of any mom. So possibly single dad who's more interested in money. So yeah, poor Johnny could be a little neglected. It might be why he's a terror, because nobody's giving him any attention, right? And that's why he loves Bill so much, because Bill actually plays with him. And like, sure, Johnny plays rough. Maybe he hasn't been taught how to play right, you know? Yeah. If you think about it, if the kidnappers had been a little meaner, if they'd been worse people, then their kidnapping would have succeeded better. But because they were actually kind of nice guys, they got run over.
Yeah.
10-year-old. It kind of makes you think of Home Alone.
Oh yeah.
Right? Because the boy was doing all the mean stuff to the people trying to break in.
Right.
So I have a little bit more irony here. O. Henry records where Johnny says that Bill is his captive. He's Red Chief's captive, and that he's going to be scalped at daybreak. And so, of course, the irony is that technically Johnny is their captive, but Johnny's saying that they're his and that he's kidnapped them. And then, of course, he actually does try to scalp him at daybreak, which is awful and funny. I think that's the other thing. Like, if you think about this as slapstick humor, like kind of like Home Alone or the Three Stooges or whatever, that's kind of like the style of this. It's like that over the top, very physical type of humor. Because Bill, he like falls in a fire. Johnny puts a potato down his back and stomps on his back, saying he's mashing the potato. Like all sorts of the scalping thing, all sorts of awful things happen to him. But of course, all supposed to be funny because it's over the top. And this is one of the things we talk about in drama, that comedies are only funny if you believe the characters are safe. Like if we really thought the characters were going to get hurt, like we genuinely don't trust in their safety, then it's not funny. So if we thought that Bill is like really, really gonna get hurt or die or whatever like that, it's not funny anymore. It's only funny because we feel like mostly he's safe.
Which I think I sort of found weird at the beginning of this, because your initial thought is, oh, a kidnapper.
Right.
The kid's not safe. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, what's happening now?
Right, right. And once you put in that safety for all of the characters, for Johnny and Bill and Sam, once there's that safety, then you can laugh and enjoy the absurdity of the situation. Right. So the first night that they were kidnapped, Johnny kept them up for 3 hours, so they didn't go to bed till 2 a.m., which I don't know about you, but me, I'd be like not doing well. And then Sam had a dream, and he dreamed, it says, I dreamed that I had been kidnapped and chained to a tree by a ferocious pirate with red hair. And that was Sam's dream. And Sam keeps saying, oh, Bill was scared of the kid. Bill was scared of the kid. I'm not scared of the kid. I'm not scared. But he had this dream. So it kind of tips off to us that really he was scared of the kid. Like he's having nightmares about him. So yeah, if you had a nightmare that you were kidnapped by a redhead pirate, you're scared of the kid. Yeah. And then he says a little further down, I wasn't nervous or afraid. This is Sam. I wasn't nervous or afraid, but I sat up and lit my pipe and leaned against the rock when he realized it was time for him to be burned at the stake. Yeah. Like, I'm not nervous, but I'm just gonna like sit over here. I'm not gonna sleep anymore. Yeah. So, and then every time when Sam leaves, he leaves, like it's always Sam leaving and Bill having to take care of Johnny. It's never like Bill never gets to leave. And so I think that's partly Sam is like running away from the kid.
Yeah.
I gotta go take care of the business now. You stay and watch the kid. I'll be right back. But really, it's about business. And then I highlighted a couple words. Reconnoiter is a military term that means to like go out and observe the region. And somnolent is actually one of our, I don't know if you remember, it was one of our vocabulary words. It means sleepy or drowsy. I remember it's a vocabulary word because I pronounced them for you guys, you know, we used to do the exercise. Yeah. It's always hard for me to say somnolent correctly. So, and then we have some nice verbal irony or humor here when he says, they don't know, they haven't discovered yet that the wolves have borne away the tender lamb from the fold. Heaven help the wolves. So again, that the kidnappers are really in more danger than the kid is. So, like, what's the twist at the end of this story when we're trying to collect our money?
That they end up paying the dad.
Yeah. So the kidnappers pay the dad $250 to take his son back. Yeah, so that's our twist at the end. We have a biblical allusion. David might have admitted when he knocked out the champion Goliath. So the story of David and Goliath from the Bible. And it is the story of a young boy who defeats a giant. So if you think of it this way, then Johnny would be David, the young boy who defeats the kidnappers. But without trying, he's just trying to have fun. And then Bill says his favorite biblical character, he says, you know what my favorite biblical character is, Sam? King Herod, which this is really dark humor because King Herod is the one who had all the little boys killed when he was trying to kill Jesus.
Oh.
Yeah, so King Herod found out that a king had been born and he's like, nobody's going to be king except me. And so he had all the little boys killed. So it's actually a very sad story in the Bible, but here it's supposed to be funny because Bill's like, that kid.
Yeah.
So, let's see what else. Oh, it seems like Johnny is actually listens to Sam a little bit more because at the top of, there's no page number here, maybe 8. Sam, like, it says he shook him until his freckles were about to fall off or something like that. And he said, you start being nice to Bill, or you're going to have to go home. And Johnny was actually like, okay, I'm sorry. I was just playing. You know, I didn't mean to hurt him. You know, so he actually kind of listens to Sam. And of course, he doesn't want to go home. So that's the threat, which is also irony. Because any other kid who is kidnapped would want to go home. But he doesn't want to go home. The threat is that he would go home. I highlighted where they dropped their ransom from $2,000 to $1,500. That was before, right? So they dropped it down, just trying to get something. And then here, they signed the letter "Two Desperate Men," which is a pun, because usually two desperate men, the way they signed it, they meant it to be like two scary, dangerous men who are mean, right? But really it means, or could mean, two men who are desperate to get some money and get rid of the kid, right? So a double play on the words, a pun with the words. A couple of unfamiliar words, chew bacons or taw bacons, which is like a hillbilly or a redneck, and a whiskerandu, which I also had to look up, which is just like a slang word for somebody who has a lot of facial hair. or a big beard. I think we should bring that word back. Since lots of guys like to wear beards, I think we should start calling them whiskerandos.
Thanks.
It can be fun.
Yeah.
My husband is a whiskerando. He has a beard. So he still thinks that all of the town people are dumb. And let's see, going down, I kind of talked a little, I'm going kind of in not a straight line exactly, because I jumped ahead and then went back. Bill begs that they could just take him back. Oh yeah, dramatic irony when Bill tries to take the kid back, right? So he's
I wasn't sure what was going on there.
Yeah.
What was happening?
So he said that he like dragged Johnny down the hill back towards the town. And of course Johnny was upset because he didn't want to leave. And he put him on the road to, like, he got him down to where Summit was, put him on the road to Summit, like pushed him towards Summit. It was like, go home, go home, go home.
Yeah.
And, like, turned around and came back to the cave. So we know, the audience knows, because it says the kid was about 8 feet behind Bill. So Bill is giving this whole speech to Sam, and he's like, I'm sorry, Sam. I know this was our plan. I know we were going to get the $2,000, but I just couldn't take it anymore. And so I took him home. I kicked him away. And so I'm sorry, but I took him home. But we know, as the audience, and Sam knows, dramatic irony, the whole time that Johnny has followed him back and is right behind him.
Yeah.
And so that's why Sam says, is there any history of heart disease in your family? Which for us also could be a little funny, because if you think about the story of an hour, which our very first story, right? And she had heart disease and had a heart attack when she found out something she wasn't expecting. But Bill doesn't. He just kind of passes out a little bit when he figures out that it's behind him. So, and then we get the letter from Ebenezer, which is the only place where Johnny's real name is used, and that's how we figure out his name is Johnny Dorset. And he says, you can pay me $250 and I'll take it back. And Bill says that's a liberal offer. He's like, that's generous. I think $250 is worth it. Let's do it. Let's pay the guy. And then towards the end, we have another example of misusing a word. He says, I should have been abstracting $1,500. He means extracting. But just like that ongoing joke of him using the wrong word in the wrong place. So the tone of the story, humorous, sarcastic, tongue-in-cheek, it's lighthearted, it's just fun. And then some of the themes, what do you think? I wrote down a couple.
Theme being that it doesn't, I want to say irony, but it's not, that's not really a theme. Not sure.
Well, I wrote down crime doesn't pay as one of the themes, because the poor criminals couldn't actually, they never successfully made any money.
Right.
And then when I wrote, when fantasy and reality collide, reality wins. Because there's two kinds of fantasy in this story. There's the fantasy of Johnny playing cowboys and Indians, like that imagination, that playing. But his reality is that, like, his dad doesn't seem to be very affectionate, and he doesn't have a lot of a good relationship with him, so much so that he makes father figures out of kidnappers because his relationship with his dad is so absent. So that's the reality that he goes back to. So a little bit sadly there. And then the reality of the fantasy of we're just gonna grab a kid and make $2,000. That was like the criminal's fantasy. And the reality is, no, it's never as easy as you think it is, right?
Right.
So, and then I just listed some of the ironies because there's so much, like piles of irony.
Yeah.
I listed just like the main ones, like Johnny's more violent than the criminals are. The narrator thinks he's smart, but he really isn't. Usually the kidnappers get paid, but these kidnappers had to pay. Usually parents would be worried about a missing kid, but Ebenezer isn't at all. In fact, he never calls the police. In this entire story, which is like maybe 48 hours, he never calls the police.
Oh, interesting.
Right? Because even when the kidnappers come to bring Johnny home, they don't, like, he didn't have the police waiting there to attack. And in fact, he
But to
said,
the neighbor.
what?
Doesn't he tell them to do it at night so like he doesn't disturb the neighbors or something like that?
That's exactly right. He says come at midnight also because he says the neighbors are going to be upset when they find out Johnny's back. Because they think Johnny's gone and I don't want you to upset the neighbors when you bring him back. Also sad. Funny, sad, funny. Yeah. And he's like, he said he can hold them for 10 minutes so they can get away. So he's like helping them get away, but not from the police, from Johnny. That's one of the funny. So at the end, one of these last lines, it says, Ebenezer says, I'm not as strong as I used to be, but I think I can promise you 10 minutes. Enough, says Bill. In 10 minutes, I shall cross the central, southern, and middle western states and be legging it trippingly for the Canadian border. And as dark as it was, and as fat as Bill was, and as good of a runner as I am, he was a good mile and a half out of Summit before I could catch up with him. So that is the end of that story. Did that help a little bit once you knew that it's all comedy and sarcasm and tongue in cheek? Does it make a little more sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, good. Well, that's it. Anything else? Do you have any other questions about it or anything else you want to talk about it?
I don't think so. I think that pretty much covered.
All right. Well, Haley, thanks for coming and visiting with me and letting me talk about short stories.
Of course. It's definitely helpful to look at it from another point of view because I miss so many of the little things.
And if you're interested, I'll of course share my annotations. I didn't go through and read all of my annotations because that's a lot to read. But I'll post that on the class in the stream. So if you ever want to go back, like if you take the assessment, the summative assessment, then you can go back and see those.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, Haley. I hope you have a great day.
You.
Thank you. Bye.